Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at the weekend of January the 6th and 7th, 2024. As far as my topic is concerned, I'm a bit overloaded with news, whether it's Ukraine, Gaza, the Epstein stuff, the unsealings and all that kind of stuff. And I thought today I wouldn't look at current events. I'd look at something that happened in the early 1930s, well, not fully the early 1930s, the 30s in general, and that was the Lindbergh kidnapping. So Charles Lindbergh was this famous aviator. He crossed the Atlantic. I don't know, it was the first solo flight across the Atlantic or something. And his child was kidnapped and murdered, and it was a major event. Supposedly a culprit was found and executed. But and it was the trial of the century, and the Lindbergh case. We haven't forgotten about it. People are still obsessing about the Lindbergh case, and people are not. A lot of people are not convinced that the man who went to the electric chair for the murder of Charles Lindbergh's child, also called Charles Lindbergh the third, was not actually guilty. And I was looking at this story. I think it was today. I was looking at some online newspaper, and it was suggesting that maybe Charles Lindbergh was actually involved in his son's killing, and it was all about medical experimentation. I mean, that strikes me as being completely bizarre. But anyway, that shows that people are still speculating about it. So what I want to do today is look at some charts relating to the Lindbergh case. In particular, we've got the chart of Charles Lindbergh, the aviator. What was going on in his chart at the time of the kidnapping. The chart of the child, Charles Lindbergh III. The chart of the man who was executed, Bruno Hauptmann. He has got a really extraordinary chart. I mean, a really amazing chart in the sense that I've never seen a chart with so much Sagittarius. And yeah, there's also the chart of the child's mother, Anne Lindbergh. One sort of forgets about Anne Lindbergh, perhaps, if when one is so focused on Charles Lindbergh, but one forgets about her. And yeah, she's obviously an important player there. And interestingly, her child, who was kidnapped and murdered, was born on her birthday, which was June the 22nd, 1930. I think that was her 24th birthday. So yeah, that's what I want to look at today. And I thought, it's a good way of having a break from Ukraine and Epstein and Palestine, Gaza, Israel. But before I do all that, I want to look at the astrology for the weekend. So let's see what's going on. So this is the chart for the middle of the weekend, for midnight on Sunday, January the 7th, and I've set it for New York. So you can see that the moon is in Scorpio, and for most of us, particularly if we are in Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, the moon is going to be in Scorpio all weekend long. So we've got solid moon in Scorpio. If we are in the Americas, then right at the end of the weekend, the moon moves into Sagittarius. So that happens at 4:08 p.m. in New York, which is 1:08 p.m. in Los Angeles. So if you're in Los Angeles, pretty much the last half of Sunday, the moon will be in Sagittarius. If you're in New York, well, you've got late afternoon, evening, moon in Sagittarius. If you're in London, the moon goes into Sagittarius on Sunday at 9:08 p.m. Paris, Berlin, Rome, it will be at 10:08 p.m. So if you're in Western Europe, indeed, pretty much all of Europe, there will be an hour or two when the moon is it does move into Sagittarius. So with the moon in Scorpio, there continues to be an emphasis on emotions. People will be quite focused on how they feel. And remember, the moon in Scorpio is a fixed sign, so people may find it difficult to change their emotional states over the weekend. So if you see someone is brooding and looks unhappy and you tell them to cheer up, that's not really the thing to say. You just have to let people be with their feelings, because you can't change this kind of emotional energy just by being cheery and happy and positive. It's just not going to work like that. So that is the main thing going on. As far as the specifics, it's not actually a particularly interesting weekend. I don't think there's anything especially dynamic going on. On Saturday there is a decile between Mercury and Pluto. So by decile I mean Mercury, there's Pluto. Mercury and Pluto are 36 degrees apart. That is 1/10 of the circle. So we can then say 1/10, 10 is 5 times 2. 5 is about style, 2 is about struggle. So it is about the struggle to develop a particular style, and that involves Mercury and Pluto. So some of us are going to be struggling to be persuasive. Now, we've had this aspect quite recently, and that's because Mercury went retrograde, made the decile to Pluto as it was going retrograde, then went stationary direct, and now it's going forward again. It makes that aspect again. So it's a struggle to have a persuasive style. Some of us are really going to want to be persuasive, and we might think we're being clever, but are we going to be able to pull it off? Maybe not, because it'll be too obvious. If you are trying to be persuasive, you do need a bit of subtlety. But if people can see what you're doing, then it might not be so successful. And at the same time, we can see other people as they try to be persuasive. So if someone's trying to tell you to do something, or trying to think something, or what's the modern word? Someone is trying to gaslight you. Then I think you'll be able to see through it pretty quickly, because a lot of style there, but not much in the way of substance. So the other thing going on, well, the moon, you can see there's the moon in Scorpio making an opposition with Uranus. That could be an important aspect. Uranus is in Taurus, a fixed sign. Moon is in Scorpio, obviously a fixed sign. So people are incredibly stubborn over anything, over things that are quite trivial. And so if you try to argue with people and suggest that maybe someone's got something really small wrong, that's unlikely to be tolerated. So you could get to sort of an argument about nothing, or people getting annoyed about nothing, complete trivialities. But today, this weekend, those trivialities are going to seem to be massively important. Now, as far as the midpoints are concerned, the sun, if you look at the sun, we've had this building up over the last couple of days, but you can see that the sun remains on the Mars-Pluto midpoint. So that is about people really trying to assert themselves. And I think it links with the Mercury decal Pluto. There are going to be people who are going to want to exercise great power. And I don't think they'll be too responsible about it. We're just gonna want to show that they are powerful. And you might be able to see this, in many different ways. It might be someone behaving obnoxiously on the freeway or the motorway, or just cutting traffic up because they've got an ego that needs to be that needs to express itself. That might be one way that the sun is showing itself on the Mars-Pluto midpoint. Yeah, and some people are going to be inclined to use massive force to get their way. And that could be physical force, it could be verbal force. So don't be surprised. Don't underestimate people, and don't underestimate the criminal mind. That's can be part of criminality, using just incredible force that normal people don't use. So be aware of that, and don't discount people's capacity for behaving in a completely outrageous way. Having said all that, there is room for charm today. That's because Mercury is aspecting the Venus-Cupido midpoint. Cupido, hypothetical planet, to do with union. So when you've got the Venus-Cupido midpoint, that is quite a harmonious combination. It is the quest for union, and it's the ability for people to get on with each other. And so with Mercury aspecting the Venus-Cupido midpoint over the weekend, the right words can bring people together. So, you might feel that we're in an intolerable situation. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of tension, a lot of hidden feelings with Moon and Scorpio, but Mercury on the Venus-Cupido midpoint, the right words can sort of break the ice and get things moving. So do consider that. And at the same time, Jupiter is aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint. So there's Venus, there's Mars. So the Venus-Mars midpoint is approximately 20 Sagittarius. So Jupiter is making a sesquiquadrate to the Venus-Mars midpoint. Jupiter on the Venus-Mars midpoint is about charisma. It can be about sexuality. It's about being attractive and knowing how to attract. And that's Jupiter on the Venus-Mars midpoint. There are ways to be more attractive. There are ways to express your charisma. Although there are going to be people who are going to be trying their hardest to be attractive. You're going to see that. I don't know whether this is a good or a bad thing. It's probably a good thing. I think Jupiter aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint is harmless, and it does show that with an optimistic mind one can attract. So bear that in mind. Okay, so that's a broad picture for this weekend. Overall, astrologically, I don't think it's a particularly dramatic weekend. Moon is in Scorpio for most of us, most of the weekend. It's going to slow things down, Moon in Scorpio. but with Moon opposition Uranus, there is scope for people getting angry if we try to, I suppose, I suppose if we get too close, if we infringe people's boundaries, that Moon opposition Uranus could act very quickly, and there could be an argument, angry words, that kind of thing. But there is scope for using the right words. There is scope for being charismatic, with Mercury aspecting the Venus-Cupido midpoint and Jupiter aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to go through the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the weekend of January the 6th and 7th, 2024. Aries. I think Aries, it is quite a serious weekend. You are going to feel that you need to assert yourself. You might feel that if you don't assert yourself, then you might lose control. So control and who has control is going to be very important to you. And Aries, you might take the view that if you're not in control, then someone else is going to be in control of you. So you might see the power equation in a sort of very zero-sum kind of way. Either you win or you lose. But I think that approach is possibly unnecessary. It may not be quite as bad as you think it is. But I do understand, Aries, that you do have you do have a lot of power at your disposal, and you can use this power to break through whatever is holding you back. So if something is restricting your freedom of movement, then you won't take kindly to it, and you'll be able to act with considerable force to get rid of whatever is holding you, whatever you feel is holding you back. Now, if you are in the Americas, then on Sunday, late on Sunday, the moon moves out of Scorpio and into Sagittarius, and I think that is going to create a bit of a change. So there might be a feeling of suddenly things get really difficult for a moment. You really can't do anything. There's a great sense of frustration, and then there is relief as you actually start to realize, as you move into Sunday evening, that really there's a lot of things you can do. That things that were holding you back are sort of now sort of disappearing. So Sunday evening, Aries, if you're in America, could be quite good. And I think you might be able to really reach out and discover new things about yourself and the world around you. If you're not in the Americas, I don't think you're going to be able to really express yourself like that. Even if you're in England, France, yes, the moon does go into Sagittarius right at the end of Sunday, but it goes into Sagittarius, then straight away it makes a square to Saturn, and Saturn is going to hold you back perhaps even more. So yeah, it does depend on where you are. Taurus, this weekend you do have to consider other people. I mean, that's not surprising, because Moon is in Scorpio. It's your opposite sign. So the opposite sign is about other people. But I don't think you're going to take too kindly to other people pulling all the strings. That's not how you see it. That's not how you want it. And we should remember that the moon, as it moves through Scorpio, is making an opposition aspect to Uranus, and Uranus is moving through your star sign. So you will have a particular red line this weekend, and in a sense, it's like that Uranus is like a bomb, and there's a certain tripwire, and if anyone trips that wire, there could be an explosion. So you are really not going to allow people to cross those red lines. As soon as you see those red lines being crossed, you could get really, really angry. So it's important that you establish the ground rules in whatever you're doing. Do establish the ground rules. You need to explain to people what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And acceptability can change. One day you might be quite open to things and not worry if people are all over the place, crossing your boundaries this way and that. Then there are other times, I think like today, when you are quite defensive. So it's important to appreciate that, and especially as Venus, which is your ruling planet, is square the Mars-Uranus midpoint. So Mars-Uranus as a pair is about dramatic action, can be violent action, can be about explosion. So if you've got Venus with your ruling planet aspecting square the Venus-Mars midpoint, there really is a bomb, and you're capable of causing a lot of damage, really. I suppose you can create change. It's always good to be able to create change. If things need to be shaken up, you're just the person to do it. Now, continuing on the theme of relationships, yes, relationships are important, and so far I've sort of emphasized the sort of negative aspect of relationships, but we shouldn't forget that Jupiter is moving through your star sign, and Jupiter is making an aspect to the Venus-Mars midpoint, and Venus-Mars is about attractiveness and sexuality. And so Taurus, if you want to be attractive, if you want to make yourself super appealing, then Taurus, I think you can, because that's Jupiter aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint. So if it's appropriate, then that might be something you want to focus on. So that's it, Taurus. It could be quite a tense weekend. But there are a few opportunities in terms of relationships, but you've got to get it right. Use your strengths and understand your weaknesses. Gemini, you're actually quite a smooth talker today. You're able to say the right thing. If you want to ingratiate yourself with someone, you'll know exactly what to say. Your words are powerful, but you don't have to use strong words. In fact, try as far as you can to use words that are gentle and are conciliatory. Focus on the common ground between people rather than the differences. And if you can do that, then I think relationships are going to get stronger, and you may be able to find new relationships, and people are going to like you, and that may be enough for this weekend. Just focus on just a few minor victories in terms of your social life and relationships, and there's no need to go over the top. And if you can do that, things should work out very well. But one has to say that this weekend there are things to be done. Things need to be done. In terms of obligations, it's like maybe you've got to do stuff before the new week starts, and this is a weekend when you have to get down to it. So it's not really a weekend to relax, particularly the beginning of a weekend. I think at the beginning of a weekend, there's stuff there is stuff that you really need to sort out. Now, Gemini, if you are in the Americas, then late on Sunday, the moon does change sign. The moon moves out of Scorpio and it moves into Sagittarius, which is your opposite sign. So in terms of the Gemini horoscope, Sagittarius is a sign which is, very connected with relationships. And it goes back to what I was saying. There are ways to strengthen relationships. But the only thing that might actually get in the way of relationships, again, this is if you're in the Americas on late on Sunday, is your own feeling of obligation, the feeling that things need to be done. So you might find that people are trying to be friendly, trying to be nice to you, but then you're actually kind of focusing on something else. And with the moon, moon might be in Sagittarius, but it is making a square to Saturn. So Gemini, you might be thinking so hard about what you need to do on Monday or whatever, that you brush aside other people, and they sort of they might feel a bit upset, a bit offended. Is that what you want to do? So late on Sunday, if you're in the Americas, give people a bit of space. Let them express themselves. They might really appreciate it, and it might give you a good chance of getting to know someone better. Cancer. It's a weekend when you are going to be quite focused on what you can do. You're going to sort of want to do something that you enjoy. It's going to be really important to you. Enjoyment may be a serious business. So don't try too hard to enjoy yourself this weekend, because if you try too hard, that kind of defeats the purpose. So if enjoyment becomes a serious business, then it's no longer enjoyment. So you do need to be a bit relaxed, and that is going to be hard, especially if you're going to parties, meeting with people, and whatever. I think you could be quite tense, and almost without thinking about it, you might say something that really spoils the party. And there is a basic defensiveness to you, which can't really be denied. So do consider what you are doing this weekend. I would think that it would be a good idea to steer clear of large-scale socializing. I don't think you'll be on good form, and even if you're able to sort of go through the motions of apparently having fun when you're not really having fun, it's not really going to be healthy, and there are probably better things. There are probably better things for you to be doing, like focusing on what's important to you. You don't need help. That's it. So I would have said, in many respects, it's not a weekend. It's not a weekend to write home about. Do what you enjoy. don't put yourself in a situation where you're under any obligation. I mean, I'm not saying though that it need be a bad weekend. After all, the moon is in Scorpio and it is sextile the sun. Moon sextile the sun is a fortunate aspect. It's about balance, and even though you might find most people just not really worth bothering with, I think there's going to be one person who you do need to make some accommodations for. This person could do you a lot of good, and there's sort of a natural chemistry between you and this person. So think about who that person is, and see what you can do to get closer to this person, and just try to perhaps explore what they have got to offer. Leo, you are probably not in a particularly positive frame of mind. I think that you're kind of thinking this weekend that everything is a bit of a struggle, that you can't just get things just by being yourself, that if you want to achieve something, you're going to have to use enormous force. That is a pain, having to use enormous force, but you seem to think that is the best way for getting results. I mean, that's not surprising, is it? Because, the sun, your ruling planet, is conjunct the Mars-Pluto midpoint. It's all a big battle. You've got to make a big effort to make a big splash, and you have to really you have to really try to cause a sort of transformation, and that's Mars and Pluto. But Mars and Pluto as a pair are about using dramatic force to change the world, or to change at least your little part of the world. And with the sun on the Mars-Pluto midpoint, I think that's very much what you're going to be focusing on. Will you be successful in your attempts to create change, to establish your power? Well, I don't think you'll be successful if you do it in a kind of spur of the moment kind of way, dramatic initiatives that come from nowhere. That's not going to work. On the other hand, Leo, if you prepare the ground, if you consider what you have to do to establish yourself, to make a dramatic impact on the world around you, just consider what you have to do, and take it slowly. And if you do that, then sort of eventually you're going to find that you will have a considerable amount of power, and people are going to be listening to you. But you also have to consider the fact that you regard people as being important in the sense that you want to be able to control them, but at the same time you don't want to spend too much of your time with other people. I think today, at least for most of the day, you're going to be quite a private person, and you're not going to want to sort of meet all and sundry. You're going to want to find somewhere comfortable, and just be yourself, perhaps like a spider in a web, in some sort of dark corner, a web which is connected to the world around you, where you know what's going on, where you can sort of assert yourself, but you're asserting yourself ideally indirectly. You're sending out the messages. People get the message, and they realize what has to be done. So consider that symbol of the spider in the web that can perhaps influence the world through, I don't know, tapping things out on the silk, the silken web in which you're in the middle of. Okay, the next sign is Virgo. So Virgo, you are certainly anxious to be taken seriously. I think, recently, Virgo, you might have felt that people weren't taking you seriously. They may have been taking you for granted. And you are now, this weekend, going to be, you're going to want to be noticed. I mean, not noticed, I don't mean noticed in the sort of sense of just, sheer attention seeking, not that kind of being noticed. Just people accepting that you are around, accepting that you exist, and if people ignore you, then that won't go down well. And I do think that with some effort, you can put yourself in a position where people are going to notice you, and I think appreciate you. And in the process, you do have to think about how you communicate. Communication at the moment is not about saying lots of stuff. Yeah, you can always talk, but just talking for the sake of talking is not going to get your message across. You have to accept that communication is kind of a two-way process. It's about communicating, but also listening. It's about feedback. It's getting feedback from your environment, and that feedback is in many ways going to be emotional. So this weekend, it's going to be very important to listen to your feelings. Your feelings are telling you everything. They're telling you everything you need to know. And if you listen to your feelings, then you'll know what to say. You'll know how to say it, and then you'll be in a position to get the attention that you feel you deserve. So it's not dramatic, but it's not a dramatic weekend. It's just a weekend where your main aim is to be taken seriously, and if you go about things in the right way, that's going to happen. Libra, you're feeling a bit restless. You're feeling that that something has to change. That that if things go on like this forever, it's going to be really boring, and this is not how you want it. And so, Libra, you're going to be thinking about ways in which you can shake things up. And being a Libra, you do know how to shake things up, because you understand. You understand the nature of harmony. I suppose it's like a doctor. I suppose a doctor knows how to heal people, but I suppose because the doctor knows how to heal people, the doctor also knows how to destroy people. It's perhaps the same with you. You know about harmony. You know how to create a harmonious situation, but you also know how to create a disharmonious situation. And this weekend, you might take the view that is something that has to be done. You're aware that you have a destructive capacity this weekend. Now, destructive, I'm not talking about real violence. I'm just talking about doing stuff which breaks the flow. So, if you see that people are involved in a particular activity, in a particular flow, and you don't like it, perhaps you feel that doesn't suit your interests very well, then you're in a position to totally interrupt the flow. To just stop things happening in the way people want them to happen. And yes, in the process, you can cause a lot of disruption. But Libra, it's important that you ask yourself why. Why are you doing what you're doing? I mean, you're doing it, I assume, because there's something you want. So just make sure that whatever it is you want, you have a chance to actually get it. And I think one thing that you are going to want this weekend, certainly something that you're going to be quite concerned about, is money. And I think yesterday I mentioned this. Money does matter to you. I mean, money should matter. There's nothing to be ashamed of about money mattering. But money could be the cause of arguments, because it's going to be very difficult to find agreement about money. When it comes to money, people are going to be very set in their ways. They have a view about the way money should be spent, saved, invested, earned, whatever. And getting people to change their mind is going to be hard work. And you're not going to want to change your mind. You actually have a very clear idea about the way things should be. You're not indecisive at all about it. But if people are very stuck in their ways about financial issues, then how is the situation going to resolve? Well, the situation is not going to resolve, and someone has to give some sign of compromising. It doesn't mean they have to compromise in an ultimate sense, but they have to at least give a show of being prepared to compromise, because otherwise the ice is not going to be broken, and there could be a bit of a deadlock situation. But hey, Libra, you understand other people. You're a good diplomat if you're honest with yourself. Maybe you can help break the deadlock. Scorpio. Scorpio, you do have a lot of power at your disposal, no doubt about that. Mars, your ruler, is aspecting the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. So Saturn and Pluto together is about feeling, in the first instance, that there are obstacles, things holding you back, but the Pluto is just not prepared to tolerate those obstacles. So it may be a day when you can break through many of the things holding you back. It could be hard work. It might cause some alarm in certain areas, but I do think that you can be successful, and you're helped by the fact that the moon is moving through your star sign. When the moon is moving through your star sign, you understand. You understand what's going on in the world, and you can respond to what's going on in the world. That is important, because Scorpios can be very stubborn. They can see events unfold, and they might take the view they just don't want to move. Let these events unfold. They're not going to bother me. Well, everything's going to bother you. Everything is linked up, and so by looking at the world changing, you can change a bit yourself. Yeah, even though the moon is in Scorpio, even though you can be incredibly stubborn when you want to be, but yes, you have the power, and you shouldn't underestimate the impact you have on the people around you. And if you are working this weekend or involved in anything to do with career and business, there seems little doubt that you can make huge strides forward. It might not be immediately obvious, but if you really start focusing on your desires and your goals, even if it's just planning, you don't actually necessarily have to go into work or to create big changes, or at least create the foundations for big changes. You just have to put a lot of effort into planning your next step. And yeah, I think you can be very, very successful on that score. Now, one final point about relationships. the moon is going through your star sign, so you are quite sensitive to other people in a one-to-one sense. But the moon is opposition Uranus. Now, that could mean that certain relationships become very unstable. The reason they may become unstable is because the other person doesn't want to move an inch. It may feel that you have to make all the moves, but you don't want to make moves because the moon is in Scorpio and the moon is in a fixed sign. And so if you're in that kind of situation, it may not be about looking for a resolution. It's not like everything has to be resolved. It may be about just accepting that you and someone else are temporarily at odds with each other, have different views of the world, and rather than try to break the deadlock, just accept the deadlock. And, in the end, things should resolve. I mean, it's like a pressure cooker, isn't it? It's like you put stuff in a pressure cooker. I mean, not that I know a great deal about pressure cookers, but one of these pressure cookers that, it's electric and it counts down, after 15 minutes the rice is done. And sure, if you were to physically open the pot the moment it happened, it would probably explode if you were able to. But if you just wait 15 minutes, the pressure will just subside all by itself. So if you're in that sort of deadlock situation, yeah, it is a bit like a pressure cooker, but it's a pressure cooker that once it reaches a certain stage, the pressure will dissipate without you having to take the lid off. And so a bit of patience might be a good idea. Sagittarius, you are certainly a very attractive and appealing person this weekend. After all, Jupiter is your ruling planet, and Jupiter is aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint. So, don't underestimate the impact you can have on other people. Don't underestimate your charms. Don't underestimate your charisma. People are going to be attracted to you without you having to do very much. So, perhaps you should take advantage of that situation up to a point. I mean, the problem is that you're not really going to be in the mood for meeting other people, particularly if you don't know them. That's something you're not really going to be into. So yeah, we have to, you have to accept your need for privacy, but also accept the fact that if you can interact with other people, you can really have a powerful and very fortunate impact on them. Now, that's not such a problem if you are in the Americas, because late on Sunday, the moon does move into your star sign. So with the moon moving into your star sign, I think you'll be in a great position to really interact with the world, show the world what you can do, and work your magic with your charisma and your charm. So yeah, you have to work out how best you can influence the world. And I think that's probably the overall challenge of the weekend. How are you going to have an influence this weekend? Because you should be having an influence, but at the same time, how are you going to respect your need for privacy? And somehow, somewhere, I think there is a resolution to that apparent contradiction. Capricorn. Now, this weekend, there is, I think, quite an important midpoint lineup, which does have an impact on your star sign. And Saturn, which is your ruling planet, is on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. Now, the Mars-Jupiter pair is about successful action. And that Saturn on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint does indicate that you can engage in successful action. Saturn is really boosted by the fact that it's on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. So what is it that you want to do? What is this thing that you're optimistic about, or you should be optimistic about, that you can actually go and accomplish this weekend? So think about it. What is it? And also consider your own negativity. There is negativity. There is a feeling that no, you can't do it. It's not possible, or it has to wait until a later date. I don't think that's the case. I think this weekend there is something you can do, which is going to be great, and can really have a big impact. And it's just about tuning into your own optimism. It's not about sort of questioning yourself, thinking, no, it's stupid to be optimistic, I can't do it, it's not possible. Yeah, it is possible. If you go about things in the right way. So it's very important to believe in yourself this weekend, Capricorn. And don't forget, Mars is now in your star sign. That is good news, as I've been saying. Mars is in your star sign. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So that is about you being in a position to assert yourself and also to be successful. So it can be a good weekend, but don't allow your own negativity to spoil things. Aquarius, like Capricorn, you certainly feel the fact that Saturn, your ruling planet, is on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. So what I was saying about to Capricorn really applies to you as well. It is important to be optimistic. It's important to it's important to believe that you can be successful. It's not just about this weekend. It goes beyond this weekend, and I think some of this potential for success might have a financial dimension. That is because Saturn is in Pisces. Saturn has sort of is in the sign after Aquarius, your star sign, and Pisces in the Aquarian solar chart is connected with money, and it's a time when you can do something quite quite impressive. But as I was saying to Capricorn, you really do have to believe in yourself. And while all this is going on, I know it's a weekend, but we can't avoid the fact that the moon is in Scorpio, and when the moon is in Scorpio, that often indicates, at least for a Capricorn, that it's important to be successful in a career and business sense. So do consider that. And while you're at it, consider how other people are behaving, because there may be a bit of a power struggle today. I say that because the Sun is on the Mars-Pluto midpoint, and of course in the Aquarian horoscope, Leo is the opposite sign to Aquarius, and the ruler of Leo is the Sun, and Sun is on the Mars-Pluto midpoint. So there are certain people who seem to be very keen to get their way. They may want to use really quite over-the-top methods to get their way. So you have to consider whether that is appropriate. And if you're in a relationship, don't underestimate your partner. It may be difficult to stand up to them because there's something they really want. Your partner really wants something. and they don't want to be stopped. Maybe what they want is completely harmless, but it's a situation that you probably have to monitor. Pisces, it's a day when you are able to make an impact. You can come over as someone who is attractive and charismatic, because Jupiter is your ruling planet. Sagittarius is not the only sign that Jupiter rules. It also rules Pisces, and you've got Jupiter is on the Venus-Mars midpoint, and Jupiter is in a part of your chart very connected with communication. So the things you say can have a powerful impact, and you'll know how to say things. The same sentiment can be spoken in many different ways, and this weekend you will know how to say something correctly. So I don't know, I suppose if you're a Piscean salesperson, you're trying to sell something, you'll know what to say. You'll know what the other person's weaknesses are, and you'll be able to go for those weaknesses, and that should allow you to, I suppose, be a bit manipulative in terms of making things happen. Don't forget, though, that as I think I was saying yesterday, your ideas are important, and because your ideas represent the general structure of the way you move through life. And with Moon in Scorpio, you're thinking very hard about the way things should be, the way the world should be. What's going on in the world, it is having an impact on you, and you do have opinions, and I think it's good that you're having opinions, but be careful about how you express those opinions, because I think this weekend, Pisces, there's some danger that opinions spoken in the wrong way, in the wrong place, could cause trouble. So if you've got opinions about the big events going on in the world at the moment, I think carefully about expressing them. Not only might you cause offence, but there's a possibility that you haven't understood the picture fully, and so it might be a good idea to do some more research in terms of supporting your opinions. Opinions are great. It's good to have opinions, but at the same time, opinions need to be supported by factual knowledge, and so that's what you need to focus on. Just look at the facts, see whether they support your opinions. If they don't support your opinions, then perhaps be ready to make some adjustments. Okay, those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and what I want to do now is look at the I Ching. So as always, I threw the coins and I asked the question, what is this weekend going to be like for those watching this video? And I got a single hexagram, 16, contentment, also known as enthusiasm. And this hexagram, it doesn't move. And I think we have to be aware that we may be being a bit complacent, because contentment is about thinking, oh yeah, everything's fine, we can relax. But really, it's not fine, because the situation is not static. It is moving. I know this hexagram is not moving, but it's a situation that is slowly getting worse. So what is that situation? Where is that area of complacency? I think you know what it is. There's something, you're letting it slip. And just because it's okay today and this weekend and okay on Saturday, okay on Sunday, does that mean you can do nothing? I don't think so. And you're not even comfortable doing nothing because you know in your heart of hearts that it's not right. But if you don't do something pretty soon, it's going to get worse and worse. So what is it? I don't know. Is it? It could be. It could be something completely trivial. I don't know. Something you're involved in making. I don't know. A plant that needs watering. You may be very happy that the plant's looking good, but maybe if you don't water it very soon, it's going to die. Or it could be, I don't know, your job, what you're working at, your life's work could even. Seems fine, but if you keep going in the way you're going, there could be problems. So what you need to do is to be honest with yourself, work out where the problem is, and then do something about it. Because this sense of things getting worse or deteriorating in a very serious way is not inevitable. You can see that there's a problem, and you're now in a position to deal with the situation. So don't be content. It's time, as I think the I Ching says, to set armies marching. And once you set armies marching, they can do something about the problem. They can fix the problem, and then there might be room for some optimism and perhaps even some well-deserved contentment. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about the I Ching, and now I want to look at Charles Lindbergh with reference to this kidnapping that people still talk about nearly 100 years after the event. It just doesn't go away, does it? And I suppose one question one might be asking is, can one in any way use astrology to work out whether Bruno Hauptmann really did kill the child? Now, I could have asked a horary question, but I didn't. So I'm just going to sort of look at sort of transits, what's going on in the various characters' lives. Okay, so let's look at let's look at Charles Lindbergh's chart. Okay, so that's the starting point. This is Charles Lindbergh. He was born on February the 4th, 1902. I've said on this chart, born at 1:02:10 a.m. The reason I've come up with that rather precise time is because I was using the time, I was using the accurate time, but my program was not using the right time zone, so I had to change the time to make sure that it was on the right time zone. It's local mean time rather than the time zone for Detroit, Michigan. So I don't really want to spend too much time on his chart, but clearly he's an all-American hero. Even though he sort of supported the Germans at one stage in the 1930s and was into isolationism and didn't want America getting involved in the Second World War. But he changed his mind, and in the end he was I didn't know, but he was actually flying planes in the Second World War as a civilian, because they wouldn't. No one would make. They wouldn't. He wasn't allowed to rejoin the armed forces. So he was flying planes as a civilian and shooting Japanese planes down. Um, so I suppose that reinforces the fact that he was an all-American hero. I think he was eventually promoted to a brigadier at some stage after the war. I think Eisenhower did, but so he's quite a dramatic person. And you can see that he's got Moon conjunct Uranus, which is sort of kind of opposition Neptune and Pluto, and he's got Sun Mars conjunction in Aquarius, and a Mercury Venus conjunction in Pisces. So that's his chart, but I'm not really interested in talking about his chart. I mean, as a person, I suppose I don't really find him that interesting. I'm really looking at it in terms of the kidnapping. So, how was Charles Lindbergh impacted by the kidnapping? It might be the case that if you look at his chart and you compare it with the hold on, let's get Lindbergh's chart. There's Charles Lindbergh's chart, and if we put the moment the kidnapping happened, well, we don't know precisely when the child disappeared, but apparently it was somewhere around 9 o'clock on March the 1st, 1932, and we can see that at the time of the kidnapping, well, he had Neptune on his midheaven, and I'm assuming that the kidnapping must have had a huge impact on him in terms of his work and his perception, and how the American public must have seen him. Because I suppose before this event, he was famous for flying across the Atlantic. After the event, the fact that his child was kidnapped suddenly became a part of who he was, a part of what kind of person the public perceived him as being. Because before this, the association would have been between him and aeroplanes. After this, it would be aeroplanes and a kidnapped child. So there's his Neptune. Now, what about this idea that maybe he was responsible for killing his own child? I mean, is that really possible? Do we see any event that might, any astrological event that might have indicated that kind of thing? I mean, I wouldn't have thought so. There was Mars. So look at Mars. Mars was at 443 Pisces at the time of the kidnapping, and his IC was at 407 Pisces. So assuming we've got the chart right. What we had at the time of the kidnapping was a Mars-Neptune opposition. So Mars was at 4 Pisces, Neptune was at 6 Virgo, right across his IC and his midheaven. And so there was a ladder. Someone apparently climbed into the house. At least that's what we're told, if you believe the standard account of what happened to the child. And then the child was kidnapped in that way. And so Mars on the IC, you could see, transiting Mars on the IC, you could perceive that as a break-in. The IC, the cusp of the fourth house, is about the home. So someone breaks into the home, and it's an attack. It's an attack on the family. So I think that fits, and it's Mars opposition Neptune. Of course, you've got a child that has disappeared. So I think that sort of fits. I suppose that fits the kidnapping. Does it fit him being violent towards his own child? Well, okay, if you've got Mars on the IC, you could be violent, I suppose. But I think you're more likely to be defensive. I mean, he finds out that his child has been kidnapped. He's walking around the grounds of his house with a gun in hand, looking for the child, that kind of thing. I mean, that is, to my mind, Mars on the IC, transiting Mars on the IC behavior. So, what about his child, Charles Lindbergh III, who was born on June the 22nd, 1930, and his mother, Anne Morrow Lindbergh. Let's quickly look at her. Anne Morrow Lindbergh was born on June the 22nd, 1906. So the child was born on the mother's 24th birthday. This chart is really quite difficult, I would have said. Notice June 22nd, Pluto's on the midheaven. Pluto was discovered on February the 18th, 1930. So Charles Lindbergh III was born just 4 months after Pluto's discovery. And I think we can get into the Pluto myth. Pluto is about being taken into the underworld. I mean, remember Persephone she was given in Greek mythology. She was supposed not to eat these pomegranate seeds, and she ate 6 of them. And so, because she ate 6 pomegranate seeds, she had to spend 6 months out of the 12 months in the realm of Hades. And so, the concept of Pluto and disappearance, I think, is very strong. is very important. There's our Pluto on the midheaven, and it is in a very public place. Though everyone can see Pluto. The whole of America, indeed the whole of the world, knows about this. I believe that Agatha Christie's book Murder on the Orient Express, I think, was inspired by this, by what happened. So it was really a major event, and I think everyone in the world, well, not in the world, but in sort of Western Europe, America, and so forth, was very sort of focused on this kidnapping. There's a Pluto on the midheaven. So this poor child had Pluto on the midheaven, had Uranus square Pluto. So I think this is quite difficult to have Uranus on the 7th. The seventh house cusp is the house of enemies, and there's Uranus. So something happening out of the blue. Now, as far as death is concerned, unfortunately, this chart does have death written on it, because we've got a Moon-Mars conjunction on the 8th house cusp, which is, I think, somewhat unfortunate. And that Mars is applying to a semi-square with the Sun. So I think it is a really difficult chart. So if someone says this is a chart of a child who'd been murdered before his 2nd birthday, I think that sort of fits. Um, that doesn't necessarily mean it was inevitable, but I think the drama is certainly written in the chart. I think it's definitely there. Um, as far as how as as how the child experienced that event. I mean, when I say experienced, astrologically experienced, um, one could look at the lunar return. So this is the lunar return prior to the kidnapping. I'm not saying it's 100% perfect, but you've got Neptune on the seventh house cusp again. Perhaps indications of enemies, something strange happening, people behaving in a strange and hidden way. I mean, Neptune is deceptive, so there may be something in there in the solar return. I'm not in the lunar return. This is when February the 13th, 1932, when the moon returns to where it was when he was born. So that's Charles Lindbergh the third's chart. But the real person we're interested in is Bruno Hauptmann. So there's Bruno Hauptmann's chart. November the 26th, 1899, born at 1 p.m. in Kamenz, Germany. And that is a really quite extraordinary chart. That is a lot of stuff in Sagittarius. I mean, you've got Sun in Sagittarius, Uranus in Sagittarius, Mars, North Node, Venus, Mercury, Saturn. So of the traditional planets, that Sun, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Saturn, 5 out of the 7 traditional planets are in Sagittarius. That is extreme. This is a person that, in some respects, knows no bounds. I mean, can they possibly know any bounds with all that stuff in Sagittarius? He was, he had, I suppose, a tragic he was in the First World War. I think 2 of his brothers were killed in the First World War. After the First World War, he was involved in sort of petty crime. Indeed, there was apparently one of the crimes he was involved with. He used a ladder to get into a house, and of course, with the Lindbergh kidnapping, there was a ladder that got him into a house, and then he entered the United States illegally. So he was an illegal immigrant. So there's no stopping him, no bounds. And I suppose you could say that Sagittarius might be a big imagination. I mean, what he pulled off. I mean, I don't know about his intelligence. Of course, we should say he denied the kidnapping until the moment of right through until he was executed. He never admitted it. But I think when you see all that Sagittarius, and when you know that he's accused of this kidnapping and murder, you're perhaps thinking that there is something perhaps extreme about his personality, or is that just extreme bad luck? I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that Sagittarius is unlucky, but it's quite a chart. And then we have the question of what was going on when the kidnapping happened. Now, he was not arrested immediately after the kidnapping. The arrest happened much later, I think a couple of years later. So if he was not involved in the kidnapping, you'd probably expect you'd expect perhaps the actual moment of the kidnapping to not really have been a big deal for his horoscope. So let's compare let's compare the two. So so here is Bruno Hauptmann's chart in the middle, and there are the planets. There are the positions of the planets when the child was kidnapped, and this Mars-Neptune opposition that was on Charles Lindbergh's midheaven and IC was across his ascendant. So Hauptmann has 523 Pisces rising, and so Mars was pretty close to his ascendant. I mean, we don't know for sure. Was he really born at exactly 1 p.m.? So Mars was pretty much on his ascendant when this happened. And he had the sun, Hauptmann being a Sagittarius, he had his sun at 4 degrees 3 minutes Sagittarius. So he had Mars exactly square his sun. And we have the involvement of Neptune. So that kind of suggests to me that really something was going on. It wasn't just an ordinary day for him. He seems, I think, to perhaps have been up to something. And so if you kind of want to do trial by astrology, which I wouldn't recommend, but if you were to do that, the fact that he has Mars on his ascendant, transiting Mars on his ascendant, opposition Neptune, that might suggest that he really was involved with the kidnapping. So those are I think are the main things going on in his life. And Neptune, you can see that Neptune at 6 Virgo is on his ascendant and is also on his Sun Uranus midpoint. So Sun Uranus midpoint, this is the capacity for someone to take sudden action. This is what he wants to do. And so Neptune, transiting Neptune on his Sun Uranus midpoint, he can sort of deceive himself into thinking that this perhaps is the right thing to do. And so I think that's further support for the idea that he might have been involved in the kidnapping, that it really was Bruno Hauptmann who killed Lindbergh's son, that it wasn't Lindbergh himself who, I don't know, killed his son for the purpose of a medical experiment, which I do find that really, really odd. Of course, the other theory is that Charles Lindbergh killed his son because there was an accident. That's another theory. But I do think this chart is this chart is impressive. The fact that the Mars Neptune is right on his ascendant descendant axis and it's square his sun. That I think tells us a lot. Now, there's one other event I wanted to look at, and that was the event that led to Bruno Hauptmann getting caught. So the event that led to him getting caught was it happened in Manhattan. He was filling up his car with gas. And in 1934, so this is 2.5 years after the event. So you might have felt he got away with it. He'd even got the ransom money, and the ransom money was given in $10 units, which were, I believe, they were sort of rights to gold. And this was very, very weird because in 1933. The federal government had banned people from owning gold, except in very small quantities. So owning gold in large quantities was illegal, and yet here was this person who had these $10 units, which were, I don't know, could they be exchanged for gold or something like that? You probably know more than me. But it was an unusual thing to have, and it was an unusual thing to be buying gas with. I think he bought some gas, and the price of the gas was 98 cents, and he paid with this $10 note. And the gas station attendant thought that was weird and noted down his registration number, and then the note was taken to the bank, and then the bank matched the number with the number of the notes that had been used for the ransom, and then of course it had his registration number, so it didn't take long for him to be caught. So if you look at that event of when he bought the gas, which I think it was around just before 10 o'clock in the morning on September the 15th, 1934, Uranus, you can see Uranus is exactly on the midheaven. Sorry, exactly on the descendant. So something happened there. Something quite major happened there. And as far as how it impacted him, what was going on when he bought the gas, because this surely was his big mistake. So I think the mistake we can perhaps see firstly in the Sun-Neptune conjunction is there was a wide Sun-Neptune conjunction when he bought the gas. So Neptune was at 12 Virgo, Sun was at 22 Virgo, and so the midpoint between the Sun and Neptune, it was 17 Virgo, so which is exactly on his moon in Virgo. So that Sun-Neptune was perhaps preventing him from understanding what he was doing, and I think that might have had an impact on him. That sort of confused him. He probably just wanted the gas. That's what he wanted to do. He wasn't thinking about it. He had these really unusual notes to pay for the gas with. And so, he was deluded and confused. And that's what led to his undoing. Now, if assuming, because I read that it was just before 10 o'clock that he went to went to the gas station. His second house cusp is 149 Taurus. So his 8th house cusp is 149. So at 5 to 9, the transiting ascendant was on his 8th house cusp. And so the ascendant Uranus opposition was right across his second 8th house cusp. And of course, this event led to his arrest, conviction, and execution, which leads us to the final event, which is the execution. So he was. This is the chart for when he was so we want the chart for when he was actually declared dead. So this is his natal chart, and the chart for when the doctor declared him dead, which was in the it was in Trenton, New Jersey, that he was executed. Okay, so. Yeah, that's a chart. That's a chart for his execution on the outside. So there's Mars. Mars was at 137 Taurus, and it was exactly on his second house cusp. So it wasn't on his 8th house; it was on his second house. But this perhaps reminds us that in traditional astrology, I think it was, I think one of the classical writers, I think his name was Manilius, he wrote that the second house was pretty nasty. It was kind of like the eighth house. And so perhaps having Mars on a second house is actually a significator of death, almost like the eighth house. And so yes, so he had Mars exactly on his second house cusp, and so maybe that that fits. So anyway, those are some thoughts. I just thought that the whole thing was quite interesting because you had a lot of charts. You had the chart of the child, you had the chart of Charles Lindbergh, you had the chart of Bruno Hauptmann. I do think the fact that Mars and Neptune were the Mars-Neptune opposition was across Bruno Hauptmann's ascendant-descendant at the time of the kidnapping. That suggests to me that he was probably involved with it, and that it wasn't Charles Lindbergh doing something weird. But anyway, those are the Lindbergh charts, and it just gives us a break from current events. And I hope you didn't find that too tedious. So yeah, so that's all I'm going to say about the subject. Thank you for listening. If you like the video, then I'd be grateful if you indicated the fact that you liked it, and I'd be grateful if you're not subscribed and you like the video, if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again very soon.